Autotrophic nutrition. Exchanging of gases. The exchange of gases occurs in the plant through the tiny pores present on the surface of the leaf. These pores are called as stomata. The exchange of gases occurs across the surface of stem and root as well. The plant closes these pores when it does not need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. The opening and closing of the pore is due to the function of the guard cells. When water flows into the guard cells, it swells and leads to opening of the stomatal pore to open. Similarly, the pore closes if the guard cells loses water. Activity to show that carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. Take two healthy potted plants which are nearly of the same size. Keep them in a dark room for 3 days. Now place each plant on separate glass plates. Place a watch glass containing potassium hydroxide by the side of one of the plants. The potassium hydroxide is used to absorb the carbon dioxide. Cover both of the plants with separate bell jars as shown. Use Vaseline to seal the bottom of the jars to the glass plates so that the setup is airtight. Keep the plants in the sunlight for about 2 hours. Pluck a leaf from each plant and check for the presence of starch as in the above activity. Do both the leaves show the presence of same amount of starch? What can you conclude from this activity? We conclude that carbon dioxide is essential for photosynthesis process. The carbon dioxide along with water combines to give glucose plus oxygen plus water. Test for starch. Take a potted plant with variegated leaves, for example, a money plant. Keep the plant in a dark room for 3 days so that all the starch gets used up. Now keep the plant in sunlight for about 6 hours. Pluck a leaf from the plant. Mark the green areas in it and trace them on a sheet of paper. Dip the leaf in boiling water for a few minutes. After this, immerse it in a beaker containing alcohol. Carefully place the above beaker in a water bath and heat till the alcohol begins to boil. What happens to the color of the leaf? What is the color of the solution? Now, dip the leaf in a dilute solution of iodine for a few minutes. Take out the leaf and rinse off the iodine solution. Observe the color of the leaf and compare this with the tracing of the leaf done in the beginning. What can you conclude about the presence of starch in various areas of the leaf? The starch is present in various areas of the leaf which turns blue-black on addition of iodine. Heterotrophic nutrition. Heterotrophic animals depends upon plant and animals to fulfill their food requirements. Some organisms like bread molds get food by breaking down the food material outside the body and then they absorb it. For example, yeast and mushrooms. However, the nutrition of amoeba is different from molds. Amoeba takes in food using temporary finger-like extensions of the cell surface which fuse over the food particles, forming a food vacuole. Inside the food vacuole, complex substances are broken down into simpler ones which then diffuse into the cytoplasm. The remaining undigested material is moved to the surface of the cell. Organisms like cuscuta or amarbale, ticks, lice, leeches and tapeworms are the examples of parasites, as they get their nutrition from plants or animals without killing them. Heterotrophic nutrition. Nutrition in human beings. The digestion in human beings starts by crushing the food by teeth. At the time of chewing of food, salivary glands secrete saliva, a digestive enzyme. The food is mixed thoroughly with saliva and moves around the mouth while chewing by the muscular tongue. From the mouth, the food is taken to the stomach through the food pipe or esophagus. The wall of stomach has a number of gastric glands. These release hydrochloric acid, a protein digesting enzyme called pepsin, and mucus. Sphincter muscle release semi-digested food into the small intestine. The small intestine is the site of the complete digestion of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Duodenum receives the secretions of bile juice from liver and pancreatic juice from pancreas. The enzymes present in it finally convert the proteins to amino acids, complex carbohydrates into glucose, and fats into fatty acids and glycerol. Above digested materials are absorbed by the villi of the intestine and supplies to all parts of the body with the help of blood vessels. Remaining undigested food is sent into the large intestine where water is absorbed. Finally, the rest of the undigested food releases from the body through anus. Test for salivary amylase. Take 1 ml of starch solution 1% in 2 test tubes A and B. Add 1 ml of saliva to the test tube A and leave both the test tubes undisturbed for 20 to 30 minutes. Now add a few drops of dilute iodine solution to the test tubes. In which test tube do you observe a color change? What does this indicate about the presence or absence of starch in the 2 test tubes? The saliva contains an enzyme called salivary amylase that breaks down starch, which is a complex molecule, to give sugar. The color of starch remains unchanged in test tube A, while in test tube B it changes to blue-black. Respiration. Organs associated with respiration. Plants exchange gases through stomata. During night, photosynthesis does not take place and the stomata helps exchange of carbon dioxide into the environment. Similarly, in the daytime, stomata exchange oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. Aquatic animals such as fish take in water through their mouths and force it past the gills where the dissolved oxygen is taken up by the blood. In human beings, air is taken into the body through the nostrils. The nostrils open into the pharynx, larynx, tracheus, bronchi, and finally reach at the lungs. Within the lungs, the passage divides into smaller and smaller tubes which finally terminates in balloon-like structures which are called alveoli. The walls of the alveoli contains an extensive network of blood vessels. When we inhale air, it is sucked into the lungs. Blood brings carbon dioxide from rest of the body for release into alveoli, and the oxygen in the alveolar air is taken up by the blood in the alveolar blood vessels to be transported to all the cells in the body. When we exhale, carbon dioxide-rich air is expelled from the body. Respiration. Cellular respiration. Food materials taken in the form of food are broken down into the cell to provide energy for various life processes. The breakdown of food depends upon either the presence or absence of the oxygen. The breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen is called as aerobic respiration. The breakdown of glucose in the absence of oxygen is called as anaerobic respiration. In both the cases, the breakdown of food occurs in the cytoplasm known as glycolysis. The first step of breakdown of glucose occurs into a 3-carbon molecules called as pyruvate. In anaerobic respiration, such as in yeast, pyruvate may be converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. This process is called as fermentation. In aerobic respiration, further breakdown of the pyruvate occurs in the mitochondria and gives rise to carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Sometimes there are lack of oxygen in the muscle cell. Pyruvate may be converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide. Transportation. Transportation in human beings. In human beings, the blood transports food, oxygen, and waste materials in our body, and our heart helps to pump blood to all the parts of the body. In humans, the heart is a muscular organ, which is as big as our fist. The heart has 2 auricles and 2 ventricle chambers, which prevent the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Oxygen-rich blood is collected in the left atrium of the heart from the lungs. It contracts and the blood flows in the left ventricle chamber of the heart. Again, on the contraction of the left ventricle, the blood is pumped out to all the parts of the body through the aorta. Deoxygenated blood from the body is collected in the right atrium and then flows into the right ventricle on its contraction. For oxygenation, blood from the right ventricles pumps into the lungs through pulmonary artery. Life processes. What is life process? All living beings, whether plants or animals, need to take food, respire, carry transportation, excrete, and reproduce to live. These processes are also known as life processes. Have you ever thought that plants also play such important roles for living? Let's find out how. Nutrition. We need energy when we walk or ride a bicycle. Even when we are not doing any apparent activity, energy is needed to maintain a state of order in our body. Our food is the main source of energy. Living organisms like plants obtain their food from inorganic sources in the form of carbon dioxide and water. These organisms are called the autotrophs. For example, green plants and some bacteria. The living organisms that depend upon autotrophs directly or indirectly for their survival are called heterotrophs. For example, animals and fungi. Autotrophic nutrition. Photosynthesis. Autotrophs like plants have the ability to synthesize their own food materials by photosynthesis. It absorbs water and minerals from soil and carbon dioxide. Finally, they get converted into carbohydrates in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. The chloroplast of the leaf contains chlorophyll, which is the site of photosynthesis. The following events occur during this process. At first, absorption of light energy is done by chlorophyll. In the second step, conversion of light energy to chemical energy and splitting of water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen occurs. And finally, the reduction of carbon dioxide to carbohydrates. Desert plants take up carbon dioxide at night and form an intermediate substance. This intermediate substance absorbs energy by the chlorophyll during the day. Transportation. Transportation in plants. For photosynthesis, the plants take water and minerals from the soil through roots and transport them to the leaves. Plants absorb water and minerals by the roots. The roots have root hair. The root hair increase the surface area of the root for the absorption of water and mineral nutrients dissolved in water. The plants have pipe-like vessels called vascular tissue to transport water and nutrients from the soil. The vascular tissue for the transportation of water and nutrients in the plants is called the xylem. They form a network of channels that connect the root to the leaves through stem and branches. Similarly, the synthesized food is transported to all the parts of the plant by another vascular tissue called as phloem. Excretion in human beings. During normal functioning of a cell, it produces some toxic waste products. The process of removal of waste produced in the cells of the living organisms is called excretion. In human beings, a filter mechanism occurs in the kidney for the removal of the waste materials. The useful substances are absorbed back into the blood. The basic filtration unit in the kidneys is a cluster of very thin-walled blood capillaries. Each capillary cluster in the kidney is associated with the cup-shaped end of a tube that collects the filtered urine. Each kidney has large numbers of these filtration units called nephrons packed close together. Some substances in the initial filtrate such as glucose, amino acids, salts and a major amount of water are selectively reabsorbed as the urine flows along the tube. The amount of water reabsorbed depends on how much excess water is there in the body and on how much of dissolved waste is there to be excreted. The urine forming in each kidney eventually enters a long tube, ureter, which connects the kidneys with the urinary bladder. Urine is stored in the urinary bladder until the pressure of the expanded bladder leads to the urge to pass it out through the urethra. The urine consists of 95% water, 2.5% urea and 2.5% other waste products. In plants, excretion may occur by transpiration or by converting into dead cells in their tissue. Other waste products are stored as resins and gums. Plants also excrete some waste substances into the soil around them.